You're going to die. But not in the way you think. Alan Watts, the British philosopher with the soothing voice and existential mic drops, once said something that completely rewired the way people think about life and death. You will never die. And no, he didn't mean that in a denial of aging, cryogenics, billionaire space colony kind of way. He meant that the version of you that you think can die was never actually.
If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your feedback helps shape what we cover next, and you being here keeps the conversation going. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.
There to begin with. That sense of a solid, separate self. The little voice in your head narrating your story, clinging to your name, your memories, your face in the mirror. According to Watts, that's delusion. That's the part that freaks out about mortality because it believes in its own independence. But in reality, you are not a thing. You are a process. And processes don't die, they transform. Watts described it like this: we think of ourselves as waves, each one unique, separate, rising and falling. But the wave is never separate from the ocean. It is the ocean, just taking on a temporary shape. When the wave crashes, it doesn't disappear. It returns to what it always was. That's what death is, he says, not annihilation, but return. Not a wall, but a doorway. Western culture, though, really doesn't like that doorway. We sanitize death, hide it in hospitals, bury it in euphemisms. Our whole society tiptoes around the very idea of impermanence, as if naming it out loud will summon it. Meanwhile, the fear of extinction, the ego's last stand, runs the show. But Watts challenges that fear at its root. The ego, he says, is just a role, a character in a play that we've mistaken for the actor. And once the play is over, the actor remains. He pulls from Eastern philosophy to make this clearer. In Hinduism, there's this concept called Leela, the divine play. The universe, in this view, is not a cold, dead machine, but a creative act. A game of hide and seek where consciousness pretends to be billions of different selves, all to experience the joy of rediscovering itself. You, me, everyone, we're just masks worn by the same actor. Death, in this framework, isn't failure. It's a costume change. But we don't see it that way because we've been conditioned to believe in the permanence of the self. From birth, we're told we are someone, that there's a fixed I navigating through time. But Watts rips that apart. He says, there is no you apart from the universe. You are not in the world, you are the world, temporarily expressed as a person. Just like a whirlpool isn't made of different water, you aren't made of anything separate from the cosmos. So when death comes, it's not the end of you. It's the end of the illusion about you. This is where it gets really uncomfortable for the ego, because it thrives on separation. The idea that we're in here and the rest of the world is out there. But that boundary, Watts argues, is completely false. Think about it: your body breathes air, takes in food, drinks water, senses temperature. Your thoughts are shaped by your environment. Your cells are constantly dying and being replaced. So where do you end and the world begin? That line doesn't exist. You're not a fixed object. You're an exchange, a ripple in a larger current. Once you see that, the fear of death doesn't have the same grip. Because how can a ripple fear disappearing when it realizes it's always been the ocean? Now, Watts doesn't just stop at tearing down the illusion of self. He also dismantles time. Not the mechanical ticking of clocks, but the psychological obsession with past and future. He says the only real moment is now. The eternal now. Everything else is a mental construct. We mourn the past, dread the future, and completely miss the present, the only place where life actually happens. Death terrifies us because we project it into the future. We treat it like a terrible event looming somewhere ahead. But if the future is just a mental simulation, then so is that fear. In the now, there is no death. There's just being. The more rooted we are in the present, the more death loses its meaning. Because death only exists when we think about it. The now just is. And yet, people resist this perspective because it threatens the most sacred belief we carry, that we are special and separate. The idea that I am just a temporary wave. Not comforting to the ego. But Watts flips that around and says it's actually liberating. Because if you were truly separate, you could be lost, destroyed, forgotten. But if you are the ocean, if you are consciousness itself, then what could possibly harm you? This is why, in many Zen traditions, enlightenment often ends in laughter. Not because life is a joke, but because the realization is so absurdly simple and deeply freeing that all you can do is laugh. You see that all the worry, all the fear, all the pretending was never necessary. You were never in danger. You were never alone. The game was rigged in your favor the whole time. That's why Watts often spoke of death not as an end, but an awakening. In some cultures, death is honored, even welcomed, as a portal to higher understanding. In the West, though, we cover it with polite silence or horror movie tropes. But Watts asks, what if we faced it? What if we actually sat with it? Not as some grim inevitability, but as part of the same dance that gave us life. Because energy doesn't vanish. It transforms. That's not spirituality, it's physics. The atoms that make up your body. They came from stars. They'll return to Earth, to air, to new life. Your consciousness, if not the story of you, then the awareness itself is part of something that doesn't begin or end. It just flows. And that's where reincarnation enters the conversation, not as the recycling of a personality, but the reorganization of energy. Watts doesn't suggest you'll come back as a specific person or animal, but rather that the energy of you continues. Not in memory, not in identity, but in essence. Life expresses itself in infinite forms, and when one dissolves, another rises. It's not linear. It's a spiral. A constant remixing of what already is. So no, according to Watts, you won't die the way you think. The character might exit the stage, but the actor, still there, always has been. And if all of this sounds too poetic, Watts would probably say, don't believe it. Look directly. Test it. Sit in silence. Observe your own mind. See if you can find the boundary between you and everything else. See if you can locate the you that's supposed to die. Spoiler, you won't find it. Because it's not there. It never was. That's the ultimate invitation. Not to adopt a belief, but to investigate. To drop the story and notice what's beneath. And when you do, when the illusion of separateness collapses, what's left isn't despair. It's relief. It's wonder. It's hilarity. Because suddenly, you see the joke. The cosmic joke. That we spent our lives terrified of something that doesn't even exist in the way we thought. That we were busy mourning our mortality while the universe was just playing. That we thought we were waves, never realizing we were the ocean all along. So, yeah, Alan Watts doesn't give you comfort. He gives you truth. And in that truth, there's something deeper than reassurance. There's freedom. Let that sit. And if your mind is spinning right now or laughing or weirdly calm, let it be. That's part of the dance too. If this made you rethink things, or made you laugh at the absurdity of it all, hit that like button. Share it with someone who's afraid of death or just afraid of missing out. And tell us in the comments, what's the illusion you've been holding onto? Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the chaos of existence. Because the universe might be a cosmic play, but at least we're in on the joke now. And here's the thing nobody really wants to admit. We're terrified of endings because we think they mean we stop. Like, full stop. Lights out. Gone. But Alan Watts is over here pulling the rug out from under that fear with one simple, revolutionary idea. You can't end what never truly began as a separate thing. Because if you're not a fixed identity, if there's no permanent self floating in space, then what exactly is dying? Watts pokes at that question like a cat with a loose thread. He doesn't offer spiritual comfort in the traditional sense. There's no promise of heaven, no threats of hell, no checklist for enlightenment. Just awareness. And once you really see that you've been living under the illusion of separateness, death starts to lose its fangs. Western thinking, shaped by centuries of dualism, mind versus body, soul versus flesh, heaven versus earth, has trained us to split the world into pieces. We put ourselves over here, the universe over there, and death as the big, scary thing lurking at the edge. But Watts is like, what if none of those lines were real? What if there is no edge, no separation, just one continuous flow of energy that never really goes away, it just changes shape? So when you start to worry about death, Watts would ask, who exactly is it that's afraid? The ego. That temporary character with a name, a backstory, a list of likes and dislikes. The one that's constantly narrating your life like it's a documentary. That voice doesn't survive death, but it was never really you in the first place. It was a mask, a role, a performance. And when the play ends, the actor isn't gone. He just steps off stage. That's why Watts uses humor not to dismiss the gravity of existence, but to show that the seriousness we assign to death is part of the illusion. It's the punchline to a cosmic joke. We live our lives clinging desperately to an identity that was never solid, fearing an end that's just the start of a different expression. He wasn't telling people not to grieve or pretend death isn't painful. He just wanted us to stop misunderstanding what death is. To see it not as a brick wall, but as a curtain, a veil that lifts, not falls. Now let's talk about culture for a second. In many Eastern traditions, death isn't the enemy. It's part of the cycle. It's respected, not feared. People grow up knowing that birth and death are just two sides of the same thing. You don't get one without the other. But in the modern Western mindset, death is seen as failure, as interruption, like life's gone horribly wrong. We treat it like a glitch in the system instead of part of the code. Watts pushes hard against that. He says the universe doesn't make mistakes. It's not malfunctioning when someone dies, it's doing what it always does. Reorganizing, rebalancing, rebecoming. And when you really get that, something shifts. The anxiety softens. The fear doesn't vanish overnight, but it loses its power. You stop living like you're running from something, and start existing like you're part of something because you are. The tragedy isn't death. It's not realizing you were never separate in the first place. Watts loved using metaphors because they cut through mental noise. And the wave and the ocean. That's his masterpiece. You, as the wave, might crash. But the ocean, it's still there. It never left. It never ends. You didn't come into the world, you came out of it. Just like an apple comes out of a tree, just like a wave rises out of the sea. So what are you really mourning when someone dies? The wave, or the illusion that the wave was ever something other than ocean, that hits differently when you sit with it. He also took apart our obsession with linear time. This idea that life moves like a timeline from birth to death, point A to point B. But Watts says that's not how reality works. That's just how we think about it. In actual experience, you are never in the past or the future. You are always right here, right now. Everything that has ever happened to you happened in the now. And everything that will happen will also happen in the now. So where does death fit in that? It doesn't. It's not something you experience. You don't experience being dead any more than you experienced the moment before you were born. It's not a state. It's the absence of a state. And since awareness is always now, there's no reason to be afraid of what happens next. In other words, death isn't the opposite of life. It's part of life. The inhale needs the exhale. The day needs the night. The wave needs the crash. This realization that you're not a separate object, but a momentary expression of the whole is what leads to that cosmic laughter Watts talks about. You laugh not because death is funny, but because the idea that you were ever apart from the universe is so ridiculous, you can't help it. It's like waking up from a nightmare and realizing it was all just a dream. You're not destroyed. You're free. And that's why, in Zen stories, monks often laugh at the moment of death. Not because they're numb, not because they're cold, but because they see the play for what it is. They know the body will drop, but the awareness never does. The dance continues. The actor just moves to a new scene. Even the idea of reincarnation, which often gets cartoonishly simplified into you'll come back as a squirrel or a queen or a dishwasher, takes on a whole new meaning here. Watts reframes it as energy transformation, not identity recycling. Your atoms, your awareness, your impact, they don't vanish. They shift. They reconfigure. They reappear in new contexts. You don't come back as you. But you don't really leave either. It's like fire. It doesn't cling to a log. It moves. It transforms the log, and then rises again somewhere else. The you think is real, the storybook you is just a temporary combination of elements. When those dissolve, the essence remains, but it never belonged to you to begin with. That's the kicker. So where does this leave us? Not in despair, not in nihilism, but in a strange, wonderful calm. Because if death isn't the terrifying void we thought, if we were never separate to begin with, then what are we really afraid of? This doesn't mean pain doesn't hurt or loss isn't real. It just means those experiences don't define the totality of what we are. They're part of the script, but they're not the actor. And if we can hold that, if we can sit with the absurdity of fearing something that's just a return to what we always were, then maybe we live a little lighter, laugh a little louder, worry a little less. Because the wave will crash. That's guaranteed. But the ocean keeps going. And maybe, just maybe, that's what Watts wanted us to see. Not to believe anything. Not to worship ideas. But to look closely. To look so closely that the boundaries blur and the illusion falls apart. That's the moment where the real clarity breaks through, not in words, not in theory, but in presence. So if all of this stirs something in you, if it makes you breathe a little differently or question the stories you've been told about who you are and what happens, when it all ends, don't let that feeling pass. And here's the wildest part: once you start to grasp what Alan Watts is saying, once the idea actually settles into your bones, something unexpected happens. You stop being obsessed with what comes after. You stop needing to know if there's a heaven, or a soul, or a next life with better luck and fewer taxes. Because none of it matters the way you thought it did. You realize you've been living your life like you're racing toward a cliff. Counting the days, counting the years, afraid of the moment your story stops. But according to Watts, your story was never the point. It was just the surface-level plot twist. The real thing, the real you, was never the character, but the awareness behind it. The actor watching the play unfold, not judging it, not controlling it, just seeing it. And when that clicks, it changes how you live. You stop needing to leave a legacy to feel complete. You stop measuring your worth by how long you can stick around. Because presence becomes the priority. Being fully here, now, in this moment, because this moment is all there ever was. The future, that's a concept. A mental projection. You never actually arrive there. You're just always in this rolling and folding now. The past, a memory, static images your brain replays to give the illusion of continuity. But none of it is real in the way this is. Right here, right now. That's all you've ever had. And that's all you'll ever be. So why fear the moment that supposedly ends it, when that moment never arrives in your experience? It's a bit like trying to catch the horizon. You can chase it forever, but you'll never reach it because the now is always here. The ego panics at this, because the ego wants control. It wants permanence. It wants a narrative arc with a satisfying conclusion. But the universe doesn't do neat endings. It does cycles. It does change. It does endless becoming. Watts wasn't trying to convince you of anything. That's what made him so different from gurus or spiritual teachers peddling enlightenment packages. He wasn't selling you peace, he was pointing out that it's already yours. The moment you stop clinging to the illusion of being separate, it appears, like clouds parting from the sun. And what's revealed isn't some grand cosmic answer. It's a joke. A beautiful, overwhelming, hilarious joke that you were never the little you thought you were. That you've always been the whole thing, pretending to be a part of it. Like a dream character waking up and realizing they are the dreamer.